Hey guys, welcome back to Snake Limited. I'm John, and I wanted to do a follow-up to one of my previous videos about, is the ball python business a good business to invest in? And I kind of wanted to show you a little bit of my journey through breeding, through some of the snakes that I own, or previously owned, and currently own. So I started off with blue-eyed Lucy's, and let me show you this girl again here. She's in sheds, so you can't really see anything in there. She's a special lesser. GHI, and that's what I started off breeding, was blue-eyed Lucy's. Now, I still kept a couple in my collection because I like breeding them. I also produced some really cool blue-eyed Lucy's, not from that clutch, but from from another clutch, another pairing. And let me get out here one of these snakes if they're not in shed. Okay, there we go. Let me get her out of here. She's a bigger one. All right, this girl here is a Mystic Special Blackhead Leopard. So that's where I kind of went with the blue-eyed Lucy's. I produced a couple, actually sold one of these for $1,500 a couple years back, and that's where I went with the blue-eyed Lucy stuff. That's why I kept a couple of the snakes that I kept, is because it's a neat project that nobody had ever made anything like that before. It's probably a world's first. And I produced, I think, 3 of them in one clutch. I held back a male and a female. I still have the dad and the mom. I'm going to try to produce another clutch this year of them because I made like, there was a big clutch, it was like 13 snakes. And that was, I think, the beginning of 2022, that clutch was actually laid. And then 2 years ago, I have a couple females that I produced that are just about breeding size now, that were kind of unique. I have her kind of listed as a Super OD, Super Enchi Leopard Pinstripe. Again, kind of a completely unique snake. Pretty cool pattern, very yellow, awesome looking girl, who I guess is standing on 2 legs. And I also produced an OD Leopard Enchi Pinstripe Hypo. And if you watched me a couple years back, I kind of called these my big cat snakes. Just kind of, they're very cool patterns. Kind of look like cheetahs or ocelots or something like that. So I kept 2 of those girls, and that's what I was doing 2 years ago. I was making a bunch of things that had a bunch of codom genes. Some really cool stuff, some very unique stuff, and I actually did pretty well on some of those snakes. Some of them I was selling for $1,000, $1,500, and they were just codoms. They were nothing that had any recessives in them. But there was also a lot of snakes I produced that were $100, $200. I was just plain bananas or plain pastel yellow bellies, because they were the kind of the downsides of the clutches I was creating. So then the following year, that's when I invested in the Lightning Pied project, and I bought a pair of snakes. Let's see here. This is the male. Ooh, he just shed too, so it's good. So he's clean, fresh and clean. This is the male. He is a Lightning Pied, which is a MJ Exanthic and Pied. And let's see, which one's the female here? I have 2 females now, but I think this is the one I'm looking for. This is the female. Same thing, just a Lightning Pied, MJ Exanthic Pied. I invested in these 2 snakes. They produced I think a 6-egg clutch. They were all healthy snakes. I sold them all, made a bunch of money off of them. And that was my proof of concept that I could produce very expensive snakes and sell them pretty easily. At that point, nobody in the US was producing Lightning Pieds. I was the only person. A couple people in Canada were. They were obvious. MJ is obviously Marcus Jane, Mark Mandic. That's his line of Exanthic, so obviously he's producing them. There were a couple other breeders in Canada that produced them, but it's still not very widely produced. And in my opinion, and some other people's opinions, MJ is the best line of Exanthic in terms of keeping the darker colors and not browning out. So I was the only person in the US that had produced them at that point, that year anyways. I sold them easily. A lot of people were paying for them before they even hatched. They wanted to reserve them, And the ones that weren't reserved at that point, I sold them within a month. Gone. Like $5,000 snakes, gone immediately. And that's when I realized I need to start buying some more stuff like this so that I can produce better stuff, so that I can have a chance at making more money on a snake. And if I don't, at least the bottom floor of what I'm netting from these snakes is a little higher than, $100. So then I started, I started pulling in, I got this guy from Aussie. Let's see him here. This boy, Super OD Yellow Belly Leopard Enchi Pied. He's also 66% het albino, but I will never prove that out. So this guy, it's just an absolute powerhouse. And he's an adult, obviously, and he looks exactly how he did when he was a baby. Now, that boy, I started breeding to really, that's why I started purchasing a bunch of pied females, because just pairing him to a pied gives me the potential to produce OD, YB, a leopard, Enchi pieds. But I purchased a few OD pieds, so I wasn't just producing single gene ODs. And so he's getting paired up to a pretty little OD pied female like this, so that I have the potential to produce more of him. And when I purchased him, he was like a $7,000 snake. I don't know if he'd still sell for that now, because I bought him a year and a half ago, but there still are not a lot of those snakes on the market. Now, where I faltered a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I decided that I needed to start getting heavily into recessives, is I bought too many of the same thing. I had like 4. This is a pastel pied female that laid from this year to 10 eggs in her first year. But I had like 5 pastel pieds. And if they weren't just plain pastel pieds, I had 2 pastel leopard pieds. I'm trying to think about anything else. Just a lot of kind of redundancy in my snakes. So what I ended up having to do this year, because of that mistake, is I had to sell a lot of those females that I wasn't using currently at a loss, because I made a dumb mistake of purchasing 5 pastel pied females, because maybe I got them as good deals at that point in time, but not knowing what my next 6 months were going to be and how many more females I was going to produce or pick up that had better genetics, I kind of just pulled the trigger too fast instead of waiting and saying, okay, I have 1 pastel pied, maybe 2's okay, I don't need 5 of them. So I ended up having to sell those females at a loss this year. But after realizing that I had too many of the same thing with those pastel pieds, that's when I sold off a bunch of stuff in the last 2 months that helped me get into new projects that I had none of, which is Desert Ghost Clown. I think I had 2 Desert Ghost females for this past year. One of them I'm trying to sell because I don't want to produce any more of what the male that I bought. Again, the male was a bad purchase for me because he didn't really fit a plan. I just bought him because he was available. So now I took all those pastel pieds and just random genetics, and I was able to pick up a bunch of Desert Ghost Clown females that are 500 grams, 600 grams at this point. This one's super pastel Enchi. And these females are basically never going to leave here. I mean, they're building blocks. Who doesn't need a Desert Ghost Clown female that's breedable? So I took a bunch of snakes that I wasted my money on because they didn't really fit a project or they were too redundant, and I was able to reinvest it in snakes that are worth an absolute fortune. Now I have a bunch of these DG Clown females. I have 5 that fit into the project. I have 2 of these Super OD DG Het Pieds that I got from Aussie. They're, if I can get her out here, she's kind of not cooperating. She's actually in shed, which kind of stinks. but those will work very well in a DG pied project. And that's kind of the journey that I've been taking, as I went from breeding blue-eyed Lucies to breeding DG clowns. And that's kind of the trajectory that you guys want to take. But I don't want to see you take all the detours that I had to go through. You shouldn't start breeding blue-eyed Lucies and then jump into breeding a bunch of random codom genes. If you figure out that you can breed blue-eyed Lucies, or a similar project that's kind of at the beginner level, I would say, you realize you like to do it, you realize you have the money to put into it, you realize that you enjoy building your social media, you enjoy building, breeding the rodents, incubating the eggs, raising the hatchlings. That's when you start putting more money into it, real money. And that's when you start getting into higher end projects. Because I'm not telling you to buy DG clowns right now. I'm not telling you to invest $40,000 in snakes. But you can buy a DG het clown and a clown het DG and start breeding them. That's going to be, you're going to be paying 2 for the price of 1 in terms of buying a double instead of buying a double visual. Or you can just save up your money and buy that really expensive snake instead of buying 15 crappy snakes, because that DG clown female is going to produce snakes with the proper male that are worth like 10 times, 20 times more than what those blue-eyed Lucies are worth. So you can buy 20 snakes and have them all be basic and just codoms, or you can buy one really nice snake, do 20 times less work, have 20 times less babies and clutches, and just do something super high end. So that's why I'm trying to preach, don't just go buy everything. Don't just randomly start investing in snakes. You need to be very, very hyper focused. And the best business plan that you can do is start small, see if it works for you. It's funny because I've been watching a lot of Shark Tank episodes on YouTube recently, and they say the same thing. You can't just raise a bunch of capital, take out a bunch of loans, fill up your credit cards before you understand whether or not you can run the business. You can't just hit the ground running and invest tens of thousands or $100,000 on snakes if you don't know if you can do it, if you can't run the business. Prove that you can run the business first. Start off a little slower. If you have the fund money to buy, 6 snakes or 8 snakes, and buy 1 male and 3 females for 2 different projects, let's say. You want to do blue-eyed Lucies with one, and you want to breed combo pieds in the other one. Do that. Start off. See if you can work with having 6 clutches in a year. Raise up those babies. See if it's worth your time and money. See if you can figure out the process for actually getting those snakes sold. Plus, then you have some really cool holdbacks. If that works for you, that's when you start taking your money and investing it in some higher end snakes. That's when you start getting in the clown pied or DG clown or whatever. And you don't need to necessarily go the full double recessive route right away. Sometimes you can just go recessive het, visual het, and pair them up and try to make some, hopefully you hit the odds and get some double visuals out of those combos, out of those pairings. But you need to start off a little slower. You can't just dive right in. And you also have to realize that if you have $20,000 to invest, you shouldn't be buying $20,000 worth of $500 snakes. You're better off buying 4 snakes that are worth $5,000 a piece than 20 snakes that are worth $1,000 a piece. It doesn't make sense when you're buying that many $1,000 snakes. You're better off just buying 4 super powerful ones rather than 20 mediocre ones. So spend your money wisely, invest correctly. Don't make the mistakes I made, because I've probably lost 2 years in terms of where I would be. If I would have started off the right way in the beginning, I wouldn't have my day job anymore. I would be doing this full time. I would probably be making bank. My projects would be a lot further along, and I'd have a better foot kind of in the foothold in these higher end projects. But I don't, because I had to kind of regroup almost 2 times now to get where I'm at. Now I have a very firm hold on DG Clowns. You know, I have a bunch of females that I can have hopefully producing next year. I have, you know, my Lightning Pied project going. I have a bunch of Clown Pied stuff. I have DG Pied stuff coming. So I have all these cool projects. I'm still working the Ultra Pied. And that's where my foothold is. I'm like double recessive, and next year I'll probably be producing triple recessive project stuff. But it took me too long to get here. I wasted quite a few years doing it, and don't want to see you make the same mistakes. So take advice from me, you know, listen to a lot of the bigger breeders as well. They're all going to tell you the same thing, is that you do not want to waste your time and your money. You need to invest wisely. This is just like any business. You need to know what you're doing. You need to research it. I think the issue with it is that the entry level for ball pythons isn't very high, because you can get in at $50. You can buy a normal or a yellow belly and breed it to another one and start making snakes right away. But it's like kind of fool's gold. So don't buy into it. Start off on the right foot. Make wise decisions and do your research. Please do your research.